Hello and welcome to Coffee with Carey. I think that when I began as a matchmaker, I may have been a little sexist. I know, this is shocking. I think of myself as being so open-minded and not seeing things in absolutes. But when I first started as a matchmaker many, many moons ago, I had some preconceived notions about men and women and their ideas about romance. Women believed in love at first sight and had a fairy tale perspective when looking for a partner. Men were more slow to get involved and most interested when a woman was hard to get. Boy, was I wrong. Today I want to share with you what I've discovered in all my years as a matchmaker about the differences between men and women and what has surprised me the most when working with men as my matchmaking clients. If that's at all interesting or intriguing, I hope you'll stick around because that's what's on the agenda. If you're new here, I'm Carey. I'm a matchmaker of many years and a dating coach, and I have this channel where we talk about dating and relating, and there's like 650 episodes. Little background, when I started as a matchmaker, my client roster was 80% women. After the first 4 years or so, my client list was probably similar to this channel, a 50-50 mix of both men and women, but eventually I became more strategic and created a roster that was 100% male. This wasn't in order to avoid women. Once that shift happened, I actually spent more of my time interacting with women, speaking to over a dozen women most every day. I interview them in depth, hoping that they're a match for my client, who's male. Sometimes they're not a match for my client, but I have a special place in my heart, and I keep them in mind for future clients or other matchmakers even, because they're just fantastic women. Getting to know men on a deeper level is also very rewarding. We speak for a couple of hours at the start of our relationship, and then I maintain contact with them throughout the entire matchmaking process, having conversations with them after every date for a feedback conversation, before every date for a chat, including a little primer on who this woman is that they're scheduled to meet, and sometimes in between dates if they feel that they'd benefit from a coaching relationship with me too. So understanding the connection points I have with my male clients, I'm going to share with you the top things that I found so surprising when working with hundreds of men every year as their matchmaker. Number 1, there was a study in the Netherlands of 400 men and women in reference to love at first sight. Their findings align perfectly with what I discovered, which is that men often fall for women much more quickly than women fall for men. Love at first sight is a much more common occurrence amongst men than it is with women, in my experience too. My gals were the ones who would tell me they weren't sure the day after the date. They still needed to think about it. Yeah, he was great, but they were still more willing to continue meeting other people, other potential matches, even after a great date. Guys were the ones who wanted to lock down their whole matchmaking experience quite often and take a little pause while they focused on getting to know this one gal that I'd introduced them to. Also, my guys typically wanted to make plans as soon as possible, and the women were more likely to feel less in a rush, and that was surprising to me too. Number 2, I found that men can take longer to get over a broken heart than women do. They're really often not ready to move on after a breakup or a loss for quite some time, where I think women show up in my roster much more quickly. It's interesting because I'd have guys come onto my roster, and during that initial conversation, I'd have to break it to them. Are you sure that you're ready to move on? Because it doesn't sound like that to me. Do you want to take a little pause and make it about you for a while before you get out there and start bringing other people into this situation? And often they were really receptive to that. Some guys just paused their start date for a few months and then came back kind of different. So I was glad I brought it up. The stereotype is women, sad and dejected, curled up on their sofa with a few dozen pints of Ben & Jerry's ice cream, box of tissues, watching sad movies. But I found women to be more resilient in the face of rejection than men. Maybe just women being in close communication with their emotions for most of their life. This isn't biological in men, I don't think. It's something that they're learning. Number 3, most women assume that all or most men want to have sex after a first date, that they'll be really persuasive need be, and some fellas are even willing to lie sometimes to make that happen. And I'm sure that there are people like that out there. But the guys that I've dealt with closely have been really happy to wait for a physical relationship after having a really great first date and feeling a connection with the woman I match them with. I've seen a bunch of them initiate physicality quite soon by touching this person fondly or even making out at the end of the date, but very few of them have even created an opportunity to sleep together on that first night. Number 4, continuing with the idea of attraction, physicality, showing affection, and making out. So many women have shared that kissing and making out for them is one of the very best parts of a physical relationship with a new partner, especially early on. I was surprised to find out that even when guys aren't physically attracted to a woman and don't want to see her again, he's not necessarily against making out with her at the end of the date. I didn't realize that men might enjoy making out with a woman knowing that there would be nothing more. Literally nothing more, because he's never going to see her again. But a handful of fellas have now told me that they just thought it would be a nice way to end the night because it would be fun and enjoyable for both of them in the moment. It's confused my gals because they weren't expecting it either, but Number 5, the stereotype is that men are more aloof at the start and less willing to fall in love, more guarded. But I've learned that many men fall hard. According to an older study, men express love on average in about 97 days, compared to females who took about 143 days. And a study in the Journal of Social Psychology found that men reported feeling love after just a few weeks, where women often took a few months. That backs up what I've seen with clients too. When a man is falling in love with you, you're going to absolutely know about it. You'll be aware because, like us, he can't think about anything else. And a man who is into you, guys will move heaven and earth to be able to spend time with you once you're a priority. So for those of you ladies questioning whether or not he likes you or if he's into you, if you have to ask the question, you probably have your answer. Number 6, on a first date between strangers, many women feel the man is engaged if he's asking her questions about herself. And this is true to some extent. If he has totally checked out and he's monopolizing the conversation to just talk about himself, he's definitely not interested in pursuing this person. But one of the surprising things about my client's behavior on a first date is that my guys think you're the most interested if you're listening to them. Rattling off a bunch of questions one after the other, it's not going to connect with my guys. So when I'm recommending that you ask follow-up questions on something that he's already shared with you, this is especially important for women trying to get to know a man. The more time you spend listening, the more interesting you seem, and that's how you have those follow-up questions. It shows you were paying attention. And then number 7, I noticed early on that my male clients are very quick in making decisions on whether or not they had chemistry with their match, because they were reporting to me that there was no chemistry during our feedback calls the very next day, right after the first date. Eventually, I needed to incorporate a question into our first getting to know you conversation, where I would ask them, when do you think you know whether or not you have chemistry with somebody new? Typically, they say, oh, I know right away. And I knew that was going to be their answer, which is why I was prepared with the second part of my question. What exactly do you mean by right away? When some of them would say, oh, I know by the end of the first date, or I know after a few dates, oh, I was always so relieved, because the surprising aspect was a lot of men were telling me they knew within the first 30 seconds or the first 3 minutes. Then we had to have a conversation about, this isn't chemistry, this is a first impression. And first impressions aren't indicative of future attraction. I had to share with them that many men feel differently at the end of the date than they did when they first laid eyes on this person at the start of the date. I'd explain that being open in this way would work to their benefit and mine, honestly, because that really impacts the chances of them making a connection and finding a partner when they've already made up their mind without giving chemistry even a chance to develop. All kinds of chemistry, physical, conversational, emotional, and intellectual. And there you have it. Ladies, are you surprised by any of these things? Fellas, did you see yourself in any of my examples, or are you very different than what I've found with some of my clients? I hope you found this interesting or helpful. If you did, you'll enjoy this next episode. It's about recognizing signs during a first date that there will be no second date. Before you head out, please give the episode a thumbs up like Mom's doing and hit the subscribe button, and I'll look forward to seeing you back again soon. Until next time, have a good one.